I studied the Equator Principles, which are a voluntary code of conduct adopted by large transnational banks, first in 2003 and continuing on, which set out to standardize their environmental and social risk management for their investment in large-scale infrastructure projects. So hydroelectric dams, mining, roads, things like that.
So what are your main findings?
I tried to study the bank's implementation of the Equator Principles, so trying to see how they changed as institutions, what policies and procedures they adopted once they decided to commit to the principles. And my main findings were that I had a sample of 24 banks and out of a total of 65 adopters at the time, and they're now about 70, so about 30% of the banks, and it was a fairly representative sample. And by and large, they have all made considerable changes. They've changed their policies, they've designated staff to specifically deal with environmental and social issues. They've done a lot of training of their staff, both the business side bankers and also the inside environmental teams. And they've created mechanisms for building in environmental and social governance issues into their review, their credit decisions. So I think that it's made a big impact. It's much harder to measure the changes on the ground in terms of whether they're actually deciding not to fund risky projects, or if risky projects are being made cleaner and better because they've been screened through the Equator Principles. This is a very politicized, subjective analysis to determine whether on the ground things are better. But with more transparency from the banks in the future about specific projects, it might be easier to determine whether there are actually improvements. Okay.
So what would you say are the main benefits for practitioners in your research?
I think the main benefits are showing a concrete example of a specific field of investment where very powerful institutions opened and listened to external stakeholders and came to see that their arguments about integrating sustainability issues into investment were not only altruistic and beneficial for the world, but also in this instance very useful for risk management and ultimately for financial stability. So it doesn't necessarily follow that that'll be the case in every institutional situation and with every asset class of investment, but I think that the fact that it's true here is useful to know that it can be useful elsewhere as well.